Okay.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Badass Clinician. Today we have Josh Funk, the owner, creator of Rehab to Perform. If you guys are on Instagram and pretty much in tune what's going on in the PT world, you know who this guy is. He's the driver, the creator of all this greatness within the DMV area. So I'm so excited to have him on. Josh been doing tons of stuff. When I first started out with Myokinetix, I remember DMing Josh, asking for advice. He was super open. He gave me some of the honest opinion. And, I'm truly grateful for that, man. So again, welcome to the show, bro. Happy to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's kind of crazy how, small interactions end up being things that turn into obviously something much greater. And, you've done a lot of amazing things since then. So thanks for having me on.
No, I appreciate it, man. So let's just go into your backstory a little bit. Obviously, you're going on year 8, right? You're on what, 8th location right now?
Yeah, we'll be opening up our 8th year anniversary will be December 1st. So we'll have 8 open up before 8, which is
I love it.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
So let's talk about how you got started, man, because most of the people listening to this podcast are most likely new grad or someone that's been in the field for a few years, and they want to know, how is it possible to do these kind of things? Because right now, where they are, right, they're probably like, man, that sounds so impossible right now. So let's talk about your journey. How do you get started? What made you want to be a PT? I think that's just the easiest part to start.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's probably rooted in years and years when I was younger, rooted in entrepreneurship. And I know that sounds probably pretty crazy, but being in a situation where my first job was paperboy, I did private lessons and group lessons for swimming when I was in high school. I spun that off into private lessons, clinics, and camps in college, and that just kind of cascaded. So I think I've kind of always had that entrepreneurial itch, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And it was natural for me to end up thinking that I was eventually going to do something with regards to my professional career. But mm-hmm. I really didn't know what PT was for most of my life in terms of that, that younger and more formative time until I hit the age of 20. I was a lacrosse mm-hmm. player at Ohio State, and I had my first real injury. And somebody said the words torn labrum, torn rotator cuff, end of the year surgery. I was able to play, and they were like, hey, you're really not going to make stuff like much worse. But, if it gets significantly worse, you'll just have to stop playing. But it's whatever you can tolerate. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I had an amazing PT, AT, and strength coach all while I was at Ohio State. Incredibly synergistic, always communicating. I felt like when I was in the training room, I saw the head PT, the athletic trainers were there, a strength coach was popping in. It was just a very, very synergistic and cohesive environment. And it was very easy for the sport coach to then play off of that. Mm-hmm. I also felt like I was always extremely informed as to what I could and could not do, or what it is that I was actually shooting for in terms of what would tell me that my shoulder was doing well or functioning well. Mm-hmm. I got through the season. I didn't miss a single game. I actually had gotten to a point where the only thing that was bothering me by the end of the year was shooting a ball as hard as possible. So if you're shooting a ball as hard as possible, and that's the only thing that bugs you, I kind of sat there at the end of the season and I told our team doc, I was like, I'm having a hard time rationalizing getting surgery. Like I'd like to just kind of keep getting stronger and see what might happen if I'm not practicing 6 days a week and competing in games. And I came home, and man, was that an absolute moment for me where I realized that what I had access to at Ohio State was night and day different to what was available to Gen Pop, right? I went to a physical therapy owned practice, and first session, I remember being incredibly underwhelmed, not challenged. The environment itself did not speak to me. I felt like I was largely around individuals who also were not being pushed, were waiting on a tech to come around with an exercise sheet. And I thought to myself, man, if this is how it's going to be every time, I'm probably not going to go back. I went second time, I actually worked with another person, and I was given the exact same thing to do that I did the first time. Same experience, just different person who obviously didn't have the luxury of being a part of that initial evaluation and really didn't have a clue as to what was really going on with me, where I had been previously, and where I was trying to get to. So I started doing telehealth before telehealth was even a thing.
Oh man, so you were using Skype?
Oh, phone call. On the phone, to be honest, old school phone, right? Probably still like a flip phone, or who knows? Maybe it was even my BlackBerry days. But
oh my God, BBM.
You're reaching out to the head PT and strength coach and AT, and you're like, hey, here was my experience. I think I'd be better off, honestly, just modifying my summer packet that everybody else was given, and going from there. And that's what I did. And to this day, I've never had any more shoulder pain. I've never had to, sideline myself for any amount of time due to loss of functionality. I played every single other game during both, the remaining 2 years of college. I was fortunate to also play 2 years professionally after that. But my shoulder was perfectly fine and has been ever since. So fell in love with the profession, fell in love with the relationships, fell in love with the impact. And when it came to what I wanted to eventually do as a business owner, I wanted to decrease the friction associated with healthcare and physical therapy as a whole and create more of a get to experience rather than a have to experience. I think a lot of people can relate to moments in which they feel like they have to do something. But I think if you create enough touch points that you start to change the psychology of the individuals and they view it as more of a get to and something of which they're looking forward to going back, learning more about themselves, being challenged, and ideally being around people of whom they feel like are supporting them with both short and long-term goals.
Yeah, no, I think you mentioned this in one of your posts in the past. It's like, PT is a grudge purchase, right? No one say like, oh, I'm looking forward to go to PT. And I think if we can, again, all of us together collectively enhance the patient experience. We're like, oh man, I'm looking forward to come to PT. Like for us here, it's like a phone call is not just a phone call. It's our job to put a smile on the other person's, on the other side of the phone, right? So that way they have that positive experience. Nobody's positive when they're in pain. So why would you perpetuate that kind of narrative, right? If you get to be like, oh my God, I can be pain-free and also these people care about me, that's a win.
Yeah, no, it starts with people. Just like anything, you win with people, you lose with people. And as you have a business that goes throughout the years, you will realize that companies also compete on process. So can you recruit the right kind of people? Do you have people that are culture fit? Do you have people that largely operate from a principle standpoint similarly? And then on top of that, it's up to the business and the people that are behind the scenes to create process for those individuals to thrive in a repeatable manner.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So let's take a couple step backs. So you play 2 years in professional, and then after that you went to PT school at UMD, correct?
I actually did 2 years of professional while I was doing my first 2 years of physical therapy school.
Oh man, I love this. Talk about this.
Yeah, I, fortunately was drafted. There was an opportunity to play. There was an opportunity to make money. And there was an opportunity to still compete at a high level. And yes, I missed class at times. And yes, I had to play catch up. Yes, I know that also created some friction points with certain faculty and stuff like that, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. I enjoyed the opportunity to play at a high level. I enjoyed an opportunity to honestly chunk away at my school expenses while I was in school. And honestly, there's no greater feeling than saying, hey, I got to play at the highest possible level for the sport that I was in, which was cool. I still got 2 of my pro uniforms at home, and I'm not a huge jersey person hanging up stuff on the walls. They are in closets, but you put a lot of time and energy into something, and obviously you want to see where you could potentially take it that third year came around and you had clinical rotations, and that was when I just couldn't rationalize it anymore. I couldn't have days where I was skipping school. I had to be present 40 hours a week, and I had to hang up my stick. And I coached for a long time. I probably should have a conversation about Rehab to Perform not being my first business. A company called Lax Factory was my first LLC, and that was the camps, clinics, private lessons, leagues, tournaments, and club teams that I ran formally from 2011 to 2018. I eventually sold that company. The final year of it, we had 280 kids in a club program, but that was my first, real formal, exploration into being a business owner. Fortunately, it was a side hustle. It allowed me to screw up. It allowed me to build without stress because I had that 9 to 5 as a PT. And then eventually, to be quite honest, it was doing well, and Rehab to Perform was doing well, and I had to make a choice. I was kind of at a crossroads. There was definitely some pain points on both sides, pain points personally. And obviously I made a choice to double down and go a mile deep with the thing that I invested 7 years of education for, and the thing that I thought, quite honestly, aligned best with my strengths and passions moving forward.
Yeah. I love that, man. And the fact that you work during your PT, obviously it just gave you that, that grind is something different. I worked throughout my PT program as well. Even we used to have a clinical rotation. I would still work on the weekend and go to class on the weekend. So
yes,
I feel like I was always grinding and just never stopped. Right. So it's an easy transition to go from school grind. Yeah. Going from school grind to work grind. It was easy for me. So talk me through, how did Rehab to Perform got started?
Yeah. So I got to a point where I had worked for 2 other private practice owners in the area. I had developed a tremendous amount of social capital when it comes to 280 kids in a club program. You're connected to parents. You're connected to coaches. You're connected to athletic directors. Like, you have capital from a relationship standpoint. I had done a great job. All of my loans were paid off. I had already purchased my first home, my townhouse. I had developed enough intellectual capital in terms of how to deliver the service and how to run a business that it was just time. I really didn't think there was any benefit to me waiting any longer. And I had also developed a relationship with somebody who was going to, be our first teammate. That is Dr. Zach Baker. On December 1st, 2014, Zach and I started up in Frederick Indoor Sports Center in between 2 turf fields. It was a 1,200 square foot space that we had as our own, which had a waiting room and 3 tables in it. And you could walk out of the door and share gym space with the personal training company of whom was owned by the Indoor Sports Center. And we also had turf fields on either side where soccer, lacrosse, and other adult social sports were running throughout the year. And that's how Rehab to Perform was born. Very humble beginnings. Zach and I, just plugging away. Honestly, the first day we were open, we didn't necessarily have our LVT flooring down yet, so we had to treat outside on the turf. I can still remember when a local physician brought over their daughter for her first session, and we're rationalizing why we don't have a formal office and why we have a treatment table out on turf pretty much in the middle of the gym space. So, it's one of those things you can only look back on it and smile. Sometimes I look back on stuff, I'm like, I don't know how the heck we made it. But I think at the end of the day, like, in terms of starting up something, building, Zach's built with me since day one. He's obviously a tremendous clinician. He's a tremendous culture fit. We have a good amount of contrast in terms of how we operate and what interests are and what our strengths are. And I think that was a tremendous tremendous moment where you just go, wow, I was really, really lucky to find this person and to convince them to cut the cord on their job. Also within 4 or 5 months of him having his first child. So
Oh, wow.
It's nothing but having amazing amounts of nostalgia, thinking back to some of those very, very early moments.
I love it, man, because now when people look at you, they're like, oh, Josh made it. He had 8 clinic, he did all this, but no one understand like the origin story, like all the grind that you have to do, like treating, in an open floor, especially like, I've done it. I treat it in a closet, right? And I have to tell people same thing. We're like, yeah, we're in a closet because of this. So that way I get more time with you, this and that, but then we're going to go do work here. You just find a way because they're showing up for you, for the outcome that you can provide. So I love the concept you mentioned, social equity. I think, can we talk more about that? Because that's something that PT were listening that are seeing 3-4 patients an hour. That's something they can do right now to help with build their future, because it's all about the Rolodex of people that you know. So can you explain the concept of social equity?
A conversation I've been having more readily recently. And not to kind of counterpoint, but it's not just who you know. It is who knows you, who knows what you do, and who knows how you solve people's problems. And that's a situation of which you've created a two-way door. Everybody knows Steph Curry. Steph Curry is only calling a few people when it comes to solving his problems. So your goal is to look at the community around you and go, hey, who knows me, what I do, and how I solve people's problems? And if you don't have that remotely figured out, or you don't feel like a lot of people do, it's going to be really, really hard to go into business for yourself. You use social equity, I use social capital, but the social capital side of things requires work, and it requires a commitment to getting involved outside of the 4 walls of the facility of which you are working in. And yes, there are some amazing things you can do inside, but there is nothing better than infiltrating the ecosystem in the world outside of your facility and being somebody who is known. And I will tell you, just because there are so few healthcare professionals doing it, it makes it so much easier for you to stand out and be the PT guy. And for me personally, I'm the PT guy, but I'm also every time red shoe guy. So people never forget certain small little things about you, especially if you own your elevator pitch, you own your handshake and a smile, and you're genuinely interested in other people. You have to be genuinely interested in adding value to others, listening to others, hearing their story, finding ways that you can help them. If we tie that back into Gary Vee's like jab, jab, hook book, like you can't have your ask, your hook, like without like jabbing and showing interest and finding a way to deliver value, delivering free before you go and make an ask for a particular transaction. So, social capital for me, it looks like 6 different areas of the community. You got to find your avatar, who is your potential ideal client. Ideally, you find 1 to 3 of those individuals. Where are they interacting in the world around you? And you do everything that you can to make touch points in those areas. Yes, you can do some stuff in the clinic. I'll always tell people, especially if you're in a leadership position or you're just looking to get more of a certain clientele on your caseload, hunt the relationships in the office. If you're only talking about clinical stuff and you're not getting involved in that individual more than just them as an injury, you're missing an opportunity to develop a very long relationship, and then also to have somebody who may allow what I'll call and what is called a cold lead, and to turn that warm. For example, you want to work with runners. You have a runner on your schedule. You could just talk to that individual about Achilles tendinopathy, or you could talk to that individual about where they're competing in running, who their running coach is, where they get running shoes, who's in their running group that they're in, and anything else that may have to do with them and whatever it is that they like doing. You want to get more runners? Figure out who the runners are working with, but that won't come without a conversation. Then you could peel back layers on youth athletes. You could peel back layers on I'm trying to be an active adult. But the more that you start to think of yourself as needing to create certain amounts of mini celebrity, and I know that word, we automatically maybe equate it with an influencer, but I almost would think more of a value adder, or what is being called more of a content creator. You are trying to create content, whether or not it's verbal, audio, video, whatever, that is valuable for other individuals, so they get the point. They understand after interacting with enough times, oh, PT guy with red shoes isn't just PT guy with red shoes. He's amazing with back pain, hip pain, knee pain, whatever it is that's going on. He's helping individuals with the human body, and he listens to them, and he does this approach differently, and he individualizes and personalizes, and he gets people back to the things that they love doing. So you start to also reshift narratives based on the depth of your relationships as well. So this is a particular area that I'm honestly very passionate about. I try to make sure we're having these conversations regularly with our team. But I'm sure you're hearing hints of patient-centered approach. You're hearing certain, tips and tactics as it relates to marketing. You can think of some of the books where it's how to win friends and influence people, crucial conversations. But all of these things, it really, really takes what's been commonly known as a transactional relationship, which is healthcare, and being more transformational for the people that you're interacting with through the community.
Man, that's a huge gem, man. I love that. You broke that down so well, so concise, and I appreciate that. And for us as PT, we're there to serve the patient. And like when someone coming to see you, you're gonna get them better. That's just your job. But it's what you do to go above and beyond. That's really gonna capitalize and build on that relationship. As you're talking, I'm going back. Like I used to just volunteer my time on the weekend at like different football team, right? High school football team, right? And just like you, I wore exact same shirt, exact same shoes, Jordan 1s, Royal. Everyone understand like that's my color. That's where I'm showing up to. And I would never miss those days. Like Friday nights, I'm not home because at the game. And I enjoy it so much. Like my wife knows this, and I tell her, like, hey, listen, football season's coming up. Can we have like date on Thursday instead of Friday? Right? Because those are really important. Like, I think it's great that you can help people get better, but if you can help them more than just solving their pain problem, their physical problem, if you can be a connector, right? I think there's a book or an essay that's called a super connector. Like you want to be that guy that everyone call when they have any problem. So now, like, let's say, hey, so-and-so is having a huge migraine. You know anyone, right? You can say, hey, I know this great neurologist. Why don't you go to this person? Right? What other value can you add on to your relationship?
Yeah, and then
right. I think that's what it's coming down to is like how do you build relationship with the people in front of you? How do you serve them? Like, can you do more? Right. The answer is always yes.
From a referral standpoint, you end up interacting with people in your social space too. I can think of coming up. We've got an event called Tour de Frederick. We go out and support. It's an amazing bike ride. It's for a great cause. We're bringing the R2P trailer out. It's just another opportunity for us to like lock arms with people in the community, give back, which I think of that word like just constantly, and support people who we already generally enjoy interacting with in something outside of, again, that very, very narrow view of viewing them through their injury lens. But then you have to sit back and you have to ask individuals that you're working with, like on your team, it's like, what makes you tick? Like, are you somebody who just wants to like plug out and you want to go sit home, watch Netflix, drink an IPA and just kind of hang out? Or like, are you naturally doing things already and they align very, very easily? Like I tell our leadership all the time, it is not hard to create relationships in our line of work. Go sweat in a group fitness class with people at Orange Theory. Go pop in CrossFit. Go pop in BJJ. Like, it's not that hard to go develop relationships in an environment which you're probably already interacting with anyway. Like we just created this program called R2P Masters. And if you're a little bit more experienced clinician, hit certain criteria, you get to pull time off your schedule. Like, you don't have to be a 40-hour PT. And what is that? You just go and you interact, you deliver a workshop, and you spend time in that environment. What do you think the caseload looks like? It's night and day, So it's twofold. It's already something that you're doing. It's something you're good at, and it benefits you and makes your day more enjoyable because you get more of the people that you ended up wanting to be able to see, which helps out tremendously in terms of your engagement. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man. So now you just mentioned, I guess, the R2P master. That's clearly a good, I guess, path, right? Where you grow your staff. So, obviously we have people who are coming out and they want to ask for a certain amount of money. They want to do this and that. You and I, as business owner, know that our business thrive on the people that are in it and the value they bring to the business, right? So let's talk about how you identify your key player. Like, hey, this person has whatever it takes to get to this level, right? What do you look for? Let's say someone wants to send a resume your way. Like, what are some things you look for? You mentioned culture fit before. What does that look like culturally at R2P?
I don't do hiring. So I'm involved in.
We're talking hiring. We're talking about people who even wants to intern over there.
Individuals
right?
At a location end up having to give the final say. So I might be an early call. I might be a DM back and forth. I might be a conversation with somebody, but at the end of the day, they need to come out. They need to develop a relationship with people that they're going to work with every day. Because I'm spending time everywhere, it would not make sense for me to hire for people to work 40 hours with one another.
So,
yeah, I mean, I think leadership team-wise, you're always looking for self-starters. You're looking for people that take initiative.
So let me reframe the question, right? Based on the leadership team that you have, what were the traits that you admire or enjoy so much that they are kind of like leadership team?
On making sure that they're working in a direction. But fortunately, at this point in time, I haven't really had to nudge anybody into leadership positions. They've already been very, very aware that it's something that makes them tick. They've come to me and they've said, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z. Usually, a big thing that PTs can do for us is they can help us open a location. And the individuals of whom are having those opportunities are individuals who have expressed and said, hey, I would like to own an office. Well, not necessarily own an office, but take ownership of an office. Now, you benefit there through profit sharing eventually, and you have a team, and it allows you to be entrepreneurial without having necessarily skin in the game or risk, because you're not the one footing the bank load. So those are situations, though, where those individuals have come to me, sometimes with a longer period of time where they've had to wait, or some individuals where it's taken a shorter period of time. But, it's one of those things where I have not had anybody express that of whom we have not been able to support as a company to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think just going back to what you said, self-starting is one of the biggest thing for me. That's what I look for, right? I look for someone that can they get themselves going? Can they problem solve for me, right? Because that's adding value. If you can solve a problem that I was having a hard time solving, or you can make that solution come up faster, that's a big win, right? And that's not just adding value just clinically, right? Because to surpass yourself as a regular treating therapist, you need to bring more to the table. Just like you said, you got to own the relationship outside the four walls, outside the clinic, right? You got to do more. If you're just coming in, walking in 9 to 5, you're like, all right, I've been here for 2 years. Now I want to be part of leadership. Like, no, you got to do all this work before. So I know you have the potential. Then I can give you a low key to this mini kingdom that you could possibly have.
Right? I mean, so we have operating principles, which are the way in which we should conduct ourselves to ensure that we continually work towards core values. Are you a solutions first person? Are you a perfect action over perfect results person? Are you focused on educating to empower? Are you on offense at all times? Are you of the belief that and the mindset that feedback is a gift? Do you protect the brand and assume nothing? So making sure that we're not assuming. So those are our big 7 when it comes to operating principles. There are things that we regularly reference in conversation. They are in our handbook. And ideally, those are the things that we continue to make sure are priorities as we move forward. Yep.
And I love this, right? Because to work in an environment as your clinic, as my clinic, we have clearly high standard because we want to just make sure we own the interaction and that all the patient that walks in, they have the best possibility version of the therapist, right? And therefore there's high accountability where other clinics out there might not have that, right? So it's great to work in this kind of environment, but you got to understand that we also demand a lot from the people that are in your door. And I'm sure, you're a nice, easy going guy, but when it comes to your brand, when it comes to your patient, when it comes to the relationship that you're handing off to the treating therapist, you're going to make sure that that person is acting accordingly, right? So how do you start cultivating that, especially from the accountability standpoint? Because I think when people are coming out, they got their degree, they're like, all right, I'm just going to treat the way I treat, and then that's it. I'm good. I'm not going to do anything else. Because accountability, I think, is something that we lack once we graduate from school, right? Because now life is kind of messy because with school, you have structure.
And we've been
structure, you have accountability.
Not only just in-person stuff, but we have a lot of online resources to support their growth at this point. And then when it comes to the accountability piece, you try to make things less subjective. We are big on our clinical dashboard and making sure that there are certain things in place to uphold standards. The expectation is the expectation. When you walk in, you know what your churn rate, you know what NPS is, and you have these things from your clinical dashboard that you're just trying to make sure that you don't deviate from. And if you have somebody that's deviating, they have people dropping off, they have people leaving a poor review, there's a low NPS, their average patient number of visits is significantly low, which once again attributes to dropouts, somebody self-DCing because there was a lack of alignment. You potentially running into a situation where people are filling out the outcomes report, low satisfaction, high pain levels still, goals not being met. There's all these different things that you're paying attention to. And at this point, because we have so many people and we have time, we have data. So when somebody walks in, if they're an outlier, like, look, we've been really successful without you. Here's the playbook here. All right. Buy in, or if you don't buy in, this is probably not going to last for very long. But fortunately, we've hired great. We've had amazing people. Never had to fire anybody on a clinical side. And we have had some people leave us and go on to do some amazing things. So it's up to us to ideally just continue to find ways to support them, support their growth and development. Because I think largely we're finding people that intrinsically are exactly what we need from a healthcare standpoint, from our team standpoint. And it's up to the company to support them and make them feel like they're a part of a growing company, because a growing company of who the people don't grow won't grow for very long, and it'll run into issues with things that I mentioned before, both objectively and subjectively.
Love that. So, all right, before I let you go, let's say we can go back time machine,
Probably go
you know,
a
you
lot
can
of
go
different
back to your early
directions.
days.
I think the thing that I'll say,
What were
find
some
a
of the things that you
mentor
invested
early.
in,
I probably should have
especially in
found
yourself? It could
my
be
business
clinically,
mentor
it could
much
be business
earlier.
wise, that
I
has
should have
contributed
found business
to your success
resources
today, that you
much
say,
earlier.
man, that was a great
Score.org
decision. That
and
was a great investment.
SBDC are two that I just
You know,
talked about
I'm
recently.
glad. I would go back and do
No
it
to
10 times.
low cost business resources, general business resources. I think too often people in our area are diving into really expensive, high ticket, you know, PT business resources. And there are so many areas for them to just learn about general business practices that are low to no money. We're talking free 99 that will give you everything that you possibly need to get up and running. And then once you get things up and running, then you worry about some of those higher ticket items. But for me, it's the people. For me, you know, the big mentors I had early on were the co-founders of Soldier Fit. They are a gym and franchise operation. And then outside of that, you know, the business resources that I had were, you know, like I said, I mean, unbelievable. And I wish I just had been exposed to them a little bit sooner. And I wouldn't have had to potentially find both of them when I was about $30,000+ in the hole. And, you know, that was that first year grind. Everybody thinks things are really tough right now because you have more. It's easier now than it was the first 18 months. And it definitely is easier now to open up an office than it was the second time. So I'm not having to kill myself because I know a lot more of what needs to be done at what timeline, and our problems largely don't surprise me. They're things that I anticipate coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh man, that's great.
We have a
Very
level
insightful.
one
And again,
Foundations of Sports
there's so many
Rehab
free
course
resources out
that
there,
is entirely
ebooks, all
online
of
and
this stuff that
self-paced
you can
with
take on.
CEOs, our CEUs,
So I know you guys have clearly
in
have some
almost 50 states.
education's component, right?
Our
So you know you have the
Blueprints
clinical stuff.
in-person
So
course
tell us
just
more
ran
about
in the
that.
Washington,
Let's say
D.C.
we have
area
new
with
grads,
courses coming
you
up
know,
in
obviously
Seattle,
looking to
Fort
develop their clinical
Lauderdale,
skill,
and
like,
Los
and they want to
Angeles.
start working with
That's
you
more
guys
of our
online
level
or
2
in
version, a
person,
lot more
take one of
case
your
studies, a
courses.
lot more
You know,
in-person
what does that look
demonstrating,
like? I know you have
and trying things out
R2P
yourself.
Academy. Can you
And then
tell
we
us
just
a little bit
dropped
more about
what's
that?
considered more of a niche-based level 3 course, Zach's ACL Accelerator. And that is entirely online, self-paced, almost 50 states when it comes to CEUs. And then outside of that, for anybody that's already in business, about to start a business, whether or not it's insurance or self-pay, I've been working with individuals over the past year and have really, really honestly enjoyed doing that. Putting people in a situation where, you know, they're adding staff members, they're potentially taking over another business, they're adding locations. It's a wide variety of different people. And honestly, just being able to share my experience. I would not be where I am without people opening the playbook to me. And I'm doing my best to kind of pay it forward. Yeah, you mentioned Instagram in the beginning. I am fully in on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram at this point. And for anybody that has kind of laughed at TikTok, I think you're missing an opportunity, especially when you talk about the future of social media. You talk about the future of search engine optimization.
I love it, man. You're crushing it, bro. You're doing such a great thing for our field, and you know, you're so easy to talk to. And how can people connect with you?
Rehab to Perform. The number 2, that's on both TikTok and Instagram. And then both myself, I've got more business-focused things from a YouTube standpoint, and Rehab to Perform has a little bit of everything. But those are our 3 biggest platforms. And I do try to always make myself available. If you reach out to me, I'll probably request an exchange of numbers. I've been honestly digging audio messages a lot more. And I'll do my best to try to make time for a phone call as well.